EGM Network.
Welcome to Scouted Treasure Coast. Today we have Marshall Adams, the Executive Director at A.E. Backus Museum and Gallery. So welcome, Marshall. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks, Amy. Glad to be here.
So tell us about Beanie Backus.
Tell you about Beanie Backus. Well, Beanie Backus was an artist who lived from 1906 to 1990. He was born in Fort Pierce, Florida, right here on the Treasure Coast.
Yep.
And he was, throughout his lifetime, he was renowned as the most iconic artist of the Florida landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a special designation being born in Fort Pierce, that he was the first kind of Florida native artist to make his renown painting the landscape. Back in his day, and even before his day, the fine artists that were painting in those days, Florida, were all snowbirds. They were all people who were coming down on the Flagler Railroad. They were only coming in the winter when there were no mosquitoes. And they were painting this, what they saw as like this Garden of Eden, this kind of lush tropical landscape. They had no idea really how it worked. And so sometimes they misunderstood what they saw and painted funny things. But it took Bean Backus growing up here and kind of understanding the nuances of when things bloom and the slight seasons we have here, and really being able to be grounded in what makes Florida really unique and special. And one of those things is the kind of latitude that we are, the tropical light.
Right.
That was very different from the northern light that the snowbird artists were used to. And he really had the eye to capture that. And so whether it was in scenes of beautiful beaches or the raging surf or the isolated backcountry, all of those kind of
He does some of the
scenes.
moonlight.
Oh yeah, some great moonlight scenes.
Those are my favorite.
They're very still and
Mm-hmm.
quiet, but there's a warmth to them. They're
Right.
not cool.
Right.
And you can see some of his moonlight scenes sometimes on beaches where the sky is clear and that light is shining and reflecting on the surf. And sometimes he did scenes out of the backcountry and had little fire scenes of campfires, which might
Right.
be Seminole Indians
Mm-hmm.
after a hunt, or it could be trappers or other people just out for the night. And so little competing light sources there, but always with that kind of feeling of what makes Florida special.
What year? What do we know? What the first year was that he really started, painting?
Oh, that's a great question. So we know that he was always interested in art as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That he was kind of a sickly young kid. And this is back in the days in Fort Pierce where there was only one doctor there.
Okay.
And, it was very, very rural, almost a pioneer kind of a community, only a few handfuls of families, etc. And because he was a little sickly as a kid, he was kept home from the early years of school. And I guess what we would call homeschooling now.
Right.
And in order to kind of engage him and interest him, he was given a small box of watercolors. And that kind of unlocked his kind of curiosity and interest. And later he was strong enough to go to school, of course.
Right.
And but was always interested in capturing the kind of world around him. And it wasn't until maybe his teenage years that we begin to see examples of paintings that we can kind of date to back at those times. He was working with modest materials.
Right.
There were no craft stores or art supply stores nearby or anything like that. So he was only able to work with what he had. Some of the materials he had were from his family's business. His father ran the what became known as the Backus Boat Works. And so he had marine cloth and canvas
Okay.
and oil paints that would be used in the production of sailboats and
Okay.
other marine craft. So he had some early access to that material and began playing with it and began to recognize that he had some talent. here. And so when he was in high school, he had some other arts-minded friends, not all fine art friends. Some people were interested in music and things
Right.
like that. And they were thinking, well, what can we do in the summer to kind of further ourselves? And these friends of his said, well, we should go up to New York City. This is the 20s. And we should go up to New York City. We should take classes at the fine art schools there, and we'll learn something, and then we'll come back down and we'll make something of ourselves. And Bean loved that idea, except he didn't have any money to do it. And so it's a great story of how he thought that his Uncle Reg, who was known for having a soft heart and pockets that could be opened, he said, well, I'm going to come up with this business plan, he's thinking to himself, and convince Uncle Reg to give me a loan to help fund my visit up there with my friends, and I'll take some classes. He worked out this, in his mind, was a business plan, and especially how he would pay him back over time. And the story is that his Uncle Reg heard all that and kind of brought it to a close and said, I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to pass it on.
Oh,
and
nice.
it blew his mind, but that was his uncle's motto. The idea that you don't invest in things, you invest in people.
So is that how he started to invest in the Highwaymen?
That's exactly right. So that became, he adopted that as his
Interesting.
life motto also.
Okay.
And it carried through his entire life, from that moment
Right.
until the day he passed. There were many people who recall him describing that story, or whenever anyone would come and want to learn from him, that was his condition, is that you have to do something for somebody else.
Right.
And while that happened with thousands of people probably in his lifetime, there are some notable artists that we're going to be talking about soon.
Yeah.
That is these artists who became collectively known later as the Highwaymen. And they are a perfect example of that idea of passing it on, and they themselves passed it on too.
So you just had the celebration, the Highwaymen celebration. Was it 2 weekends ago?
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
yeah.
And how did that go?
It went great. Oh my gosh. So that is an annual event that the Backus Museum does
Right.
every year. And we've done it 11 years consecutively. And it is a weekend, a long weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it offers free admission all 3 days. Free admission to see the special exhibition that we're going to talk about right now. That's about the Highwaymen artists that we arrange every year, a new exhibition every year around this amazing art. And there is also dealers outside
Okay.
who bring paintings just those 3 days that are available for sale. And these are paintings that are originals from these vintage artists.
Okay.
And so for people who are looking to build their collection or browse or imagine what that would look like in their home or their office or whatever, it's a perfect opportunity to kind of get a sense of why this is important, and to imagine, going home with something.
So how many Highwaymen were there?
So there's an official number of 26.
Okay.
That official number comes from their induction into the Florida Artist Hall of Fame in 2004. For that induction, they required a set list of
Right.
individuals, and the list was determined by those artists who were the most active consistently from the beginnings of their practice until then. And they narrowed that list down to 26. They're called the Highwaymen, but there was one woman in the group also, so important to recall that. Mary Ann Carroll was a member of the group. And so those 26 artists were recognized, and that's where the kind of line is for what is sometimes called the original Florida Highwaymen.
So tell the story about really how Backus and the Highwaymen all came about, because they went to him for art school. Is that correct?
Kind of right, yes. So the stories that have come down are that one day in 1954, Backus was born in 1906, so he was an older established artist by then. He lived on Avenue C in Fort Pierce, and his home was his studio. He had a studio home, so he conducted business right there. He always had an open door policy. The other thing that was distinctive about Backus, in addition to, and perhaps working in partnership with that idea of passing it on, of paying it forward, as we might say today, is that he had an open door policy. And what that meant to him was that in that day and age, in the 1950s, in this example, he was very progressive. He did not believe in judging people by the color of their skin or by their gender or whether they were religious or non-religious or by their social class. He felt like if you were interested in art or interested in being civil and social, you should be able to come in and have a good time at his place.
Mm-hmm.
If you were hungry, he wanted you to come in and he'd feed you. And you'd have a place to stay, you could stay with him for a little while. So he had that kind of open door policy and feeling that was well noticed in the African American community at the time of racial segregation. So Avenue C was just one block over from the traditional color lines, as they used to call them, Avenue D, which was the beginning of, or the avenue that led to the heart of Lincoln Park, the African American community. And he was right there. And the African American community knew that he was helpful to them. And so in 1954, a young man by the age of 19 named Harold Newton, who had been born in Florida but had grown up mostly in Georgia, by then had moved back to Florida with the idea of being an artist. He was talented. He'd been had some success in Georgia painting religious scenes.
Okay.
And
I wonder if any of his paintings from up there, I wonder if there's any, has he sold them around here? Or
we have not, to my knowledge, there have not been any discovered or recovered religious scenes. Right. I would love to, I need to find a grant for this. I need to find, do some legwork up in Georgia.
That would be interesting.
And go door to door and see if there's any examples somewhere. But he was doing these religious paintings, and he had some success. And one of his means of success was identifying his audience. And the way he identified his audience was he would do his paintings, and he'd go to church on Sunday and park in the parking lot, and he would wait for church to get out.
Okay.
And all of his potential customers would come out and see his paintings arrayed in the parking lot, and he would make his sales. So that was a great formula for his success there. He came back to Florida and tried the same thing. It didn't work for whatever reason. So he was trying to kind of figure out, well, how do I create a new formula? And he was encouraged to visit Backus, who was known for being an established artist and also for being a helpful person, no matter your race. So he walks into Backus' studio, and Backus welcomes him, and he watches Backus paint these scenes of the landscape. And Backus encourages him, says, you could do this. The landscape doesn't belong to me. It belongs to everybody.
Right.
You can see it outside your door and your window too. And so, watch what I'm doing and let me help you. And he would give them art supplies, as you mentioned.
Okay.
And encouragement and critiques if they wanted. And this kind of coalesced with Harold, thinking, I think I could do this. He tried a few, his own hand at it. He was pretty good. He got better. And he began to kind of use that direct sales, that door-to-door idea, instead of setting up in a parking lot where his audience would come out of church. He was like, well, how can I find the audience who's going to be interested in this? And he realized I could go door to door. And so he did. And he became successful. So this is over just a few years in the middle 50s. His friends and neighbors of the African-American community are seeing Harold do this. And Harold's a very nice guy. He's just like, this isn't just me doing it.
Right.
You could do this too, maybe. Why don't you watch me? And maybe you could do it too. And a few of the friends and neighbors began to kind of see that and try their hand at it. And they were pretty good at it also. And they got better as they went. So the next person who is really notable in this period, just a few years later, is a young man, a high school student by the name of Alfred Hare. Okay. And in 1958 or so, he was in his art class at the segregated Lincoln Park Academy. Yep. And which still exists today as part of the St. Lucie Public Schools. And he was encouraged by his art teacher to follow an artistic path, and the way that they engineered it was through what what viewers and listeners today might remember as vocational training.
Okay.
Those
Yeah.
programs in high school that when you became a senior, they would try to encourage you to learn a craft or a trade. And by doing so, you would go to school maybe in the mornings and take care of your core classes,
Uh-huh.
make sure you could graduate, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And then the balance of your day, your afternoon,
Is in your
is in your job site.
Yep,
That's
yep,
right.
yep.
And so Alfred Hare's job site was Backus's studio.
Oh, wow.
So he is the one artist of these 26 who had
lucky
like
kid. Yep.
the most
Yeah.
formal relationship as a student
Uh-huh.
to Backus. And Backus taught him everything he could. He taught him the painting. He was skilled also. His art teacher had recommended him. He was skilled also. They talked about the economics of it. They talked about the marketing of it, the business side of it. And he soaked it up. He was very keen on his ability to do this and kind of the promise of what he could do. And for Harold before him and Alfred and for all the other artists, one of the things that was really kind of attractive to them was the idea of being your own boss.
Right.
At a time when labor opportunities, job opportunities were very limited in the African American community and the height of racial segregation. And so they loved the idea of, instead of going to the groves or the tomato packing
Mhm.
plants or whatever, and getting fractional wages only when the weather was good.
That's right. Right.
That these artists could control their destiny
That's right.
by painting as much as they wanted to, as long as they wanted to, as many as they wanted to, and sell them and be in charge. And so as many as they wanted to was one of the key things that they figured out too, is that they were watching Backus as the only real professional artist that they knew right there in the community. And by that time, Backus was an established artist.
Now, how did Backus sell his stuff? Because he didn't go door to door.
He didn't go door to door. He was well known by this time. He was in his 40s and 50s at this time.
Okay.
And because he had his home studio, he had it was like brick and mortar, right? It was like his
He had a
business.
retailer, yeah.
Exactly. So, and people would come to, and he was set up for that. The studio was social environment also. He would have music in the background and things like that. Air conditioning, which was a key thing for clients back then. Not common in everybody's home in the 50s, but he made sure that he had it so that people would feel comfortable coming in.
Yep.
And so that was kind of the, he had set up like this kind of sales environment, if you think of it that way, in his home. The African-American artists did not have that option open because of the color lines, because of the business practices. They couldn't open their own brick and mortar place. It would have to be in the black side of town. Whites didn't go to the black side of town to conduct business. So a major clientele base would be cut off if they tried to set up a brick and mortar space. So they realized pretty quickly that what they needed to do was to do door to door. And later, many years later, is where they got that colorful name, the Highwaymen. And that's because of those practices.
They were walking down the highway. A lot of the hotels and businesses, they'd come in and they'd sell, and they'd, immediately furnish their offices or, whatever, the hotel rooms with
waiting rooms, doctors and dentists,
paintings,
and furniture stores. All that beautiful furniture. You need a beautiful painting over the sofa, or it might not sell.
That's right.
So they were very keen to that, very savvy about that. And yes, the highway was a place that race didn't matter. That if you could get a car, then you could drive.
Right.
And you could go into white neighborhoods as a door-to-door salesman, or you could go to businesses, or you could set up, if a friendly bank president would allow you, you could set up your paintings in the lobby of the bank on payday. Yeah. And people who are weekly waged and come in to cash their checks would have their paintings right there.
They would do that too, didn't they?
That's right. They were very creative at how they marketed themselves.
Interesting.
So so they're figuring this out. Their friends and neighbors are watching them. And that's one of the kind of key features too, is that camaraderie, is that they were not possessive of these ideas. They were problem solving in a creative way, but it wasn't
Absolutely.
like, this is my turf, you can't do this.
Right.
They were welcoming to everybody. And then there was a business move that is credited to Alfred Hare that really kind of accelerated this movement. And that is Alfred began to look at this as a businessman and realize, all of the artists are spending their time painting, producing the product in business terms, but then they're having to stop and then load the cars and then go try to sell them.
Right.
Wouldn't it be better if you could scale your model and hire staff, hire salesmen to sell them for you? Then you wouldn't have to stop producing. Then you could continue producing the paintings all day if you needed to, knowing that someone was picking them up in the morning and bringing in the cash in the afternoon.
So who did that? Because I mean, I've heard that story. I think I actually heard it from you. I don't, I remember it now. So who did they get to do that, and how did that all work? Did those people become artists as well?
Well, so there were a number of salesmen at the time who were engaged for this. The most successful, who's remembered today, is Al Black. And Al Black started as a salesman, the best salesman by everyone's account. And then at a certain point in 1970, he decided that he would try his hand also at it. And so he became an artist as well and is numbered in the original 26. Al Black just passed away last year. But he was quite a face for the movement, for those artists who were interested in that model. They would turn their paintings or deliver their paintings to him to go out on the road to sell in a day. And Al's goal was to sell them all by the end of the day. If he came back with paintings, that's a big L.
Right.
So his idea was to come back, and all of these artists are painting on the regular every day, and they're not keeping inventory. The whole goal is to sell everything and to keep selling, because they have no place to store these things.
Yep. So he was
the one, and he had a silver tongue and was very capable and social and well-mannered, and all the things that he knew that would aid him in his work. And he had a great car, and he would drive around, and he would also take a cut of the of the sales, which was his motivation. So that really, in automotive terms, turbocharged the movement, because suddenly you had a motivated independent contractor whose goal it was to sell everything, because that would mean that he would make more. And then he would be hounding you as the artist to give me more to sell, because I could do this.
right.
So, so that's how that worked. Some of the artists liked that, but some of the artists didn't like the idea of this commission business, because they were like, I'm pretty good at selling my works. I'm a good face for my own art, and I don't have to pay anybody a commission. I think I'll just stick to this idea of I will paint as often as I want and when I can, and then I'll stop, and then I'll go sell it, because I'm the best representative of my art.
Okay.
So there were...
so not all of them did that.
Not all of them did that, but certainly it was through the efforts of Al Black that the work went very widely distributed.
Right. It became a treasure coast. I mean, it's really the history.
Yeah, and beyond,
Yep,
right? Because as far as you could go on a tank of gas is how Al would do it, So
how far? I mean, how far out do you think his reach got within the state of Florida?
So within the state of Florida, good limitation, because Al would tell stories. Al was originally born in Mississippi, and he made a few trips back home, and he didn't travel empty. So he would take paintings with him and sell them out of state too.
Okay.
But for your question for the state, it's easy to reckon by gas tanks, So there are people, we hear stories still all the time, which are really valuable and important to me, of people remembering that they bought paintings down at Homestead,
Yeah.
way down in Homestead, and way up, in the Jacksonville area. US 1 and A1A are the most traditional routes. These artists, I should mention, what might be obvious to many, is this is before the interstate system,
Okay.
right? So
Right.
these are artists who
So
were
they're traveling up US 1.
That's right.
Hence
down,
the high,
yeah.
hence the highwaymen.
Right.
They weren't really walking up and down I-95 or the turnpike.
No.
But yes, hence the
Yeah,
highwaymen.
the turnpike was even relatively new
yeah.
in the 60s or 70s. So,
Yeah.
or by the time I got to Fort Pierce. So yeah, so these artists were going as far as they could because of finances, because of the economics of it, and also because of the social and racial issues during those early periods. It was not in their best interest to stay the night somewhere.
Right.
That cost money, and there were very limited accommodation options for African Americans on the road. So, so as far as a tank of gas would take them, and they could gas up and get back before
Right. So
before nightfall, that would be the ideal for them. So, yeah.
is there any other artists that Backus had of influence on, like the Highwaymen?
When you say like the Highwaymen,
Well, because he taught them and really sort of, not just taught them in their, in their art, but
Sure.
also in the whole business as
Yes,
far as how,
right.
What's the best way to get out there and sell. So what other artists did he, really play a major role in
Sure.
their career?
it's notable to mention that the Highwaymen artists kind of stand alone in the sense that while all of the artists who intersected with Backus learned a great deal and credit him with artistic recognition, but the Highwaymen artists, because of the unique barriers and obstacles that they had to overcome, and they were innovating their own model.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I want to say that
Absolutely.
but for other artists, there are many, and there are notables. With our limited time, I'll only talk about a few. But there are two other artists who were recognized also in the Florida Artists Hall of Fame
Okay.
that are directly traced to Backus's doorstep. The first one was James Hutchinson.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Jim Hutchinson just passed away a few years ago in his 90s.
His son and Mary lived down the street from.
Is that right?
Yes. Stewart, yep.
Right. He had two sons, Kevin and Kelly.
Yes.
And Kevin is also an artist.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Still producing work and still in the area. So Jim Hutchinson was a teenager who was brought to Backus's studio in the 50s or in 49 or 50 by his older sister,
Mm-hmm.
who was looking for ways to encourage her younger brother along a successful career track. And because he was interested in art, she took him to Backus's studio, and he became a student of Backus. Now, to the side, and Jim would always joke about this, Jim said the reason that he was taken as a student was not because he was a promising student, even though he was. It was because Bean took a shine to his sister, who had brought him in that day, Patsy, because Bean later married Patsy.
Okay.
So Jim became his
Interesting.
brother-in-law.
That's interesting.
Younger, of course, but his brother-in-law.
Yep.
So Jim's career took off after his Navy service in the 50s.
Yeah.
Came back and was very interested in pursuing the arts. And one of his most notable claims to fame is that he lived on the Miccosukee tribal lands for a number of years and painted not just the landscapes, but some of the tribal elders.
Okay.
So, like portraits and formal kind of portraits.
Yes, I've seen some of that.
Yes, right. Yes,
Yes,
he got a
yeah.
great deal of renown in Tallahassee. Many of those paintings were put together as a group and shown in the state capitol. There were a set of prints that were made that governors of the state have used to share with foreign dignitaries.
Yes,
and so his work is really all over the world.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
In that regard. And so he became very well known for that. And he's in the Florida Artists Hall of Fame. He was inducted during his lifetime in 2000. 2012, I think.
Okay.
And then the other person I'll mention, also in the Florida Artist Hall of Fame, is Jacqueline Bryce, one of his female students. In Backus's later years, she was an established artist in Miami, in that Miami area, who wanted to train with Backus and learn from him, and was with him in his last dozen or so years of life. Would commute up to Fort Pierce to learn from him and to visit him, and also adopted the landscape and the natural environment as the subject that she became most renowned for. And a few years after Jim was inducted, she was inducted as well. And she's still with us today.
Okay.
So those are just two. There's many others, and there's several who are still living in the area on the Treasure Coast. Jackie Shindeheady and Rick Kelly, and just a number of different artists. I don't want to leave anybody out, but
Right.
a lot of them who are still with us and who praise Backus as the mentor, as the exemplar that they look to, and that they are the beneficiaries of that. Pass it on.
He's the dignitary of the artist
That's
from
right.
the Treasure Coast.
In his lifetime, he was referred to as the dean of Florida landscape painting.
Yes.
As if he was like this revered figure.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you and I've had this discussion before. How long have you been at the museum?
I've been at the Backus Museum for 9 years. This is my 9th year now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, time flies when
It
you're
is,
having
it
fun.
is a wow, yeah.
And before that, you were at the Vero Beach Museum?
That's right. I was the director of education at the Vero Beach Museum of Art.
Okay. And what's your background with in the arts?
So I was trained as an artist. My undergraduate is in studio art.
All right.
So I don't practice
So do
it
you
as
have
much.
some of your paintings at the...
I don't. No, I don't practice as much, which is a sad thing to admit, but here I am admitting it. I don't practice it as much. When I kind of fell into museum work, which was just after I finished my my bachelor's in the studio art, I fell into museum work because I had a lot of art history in my studio degree program, and so I really liked art history and was connected to it, and I began teaching at my kind of hometown museum, and teaching kids is how I kind of started, and realized that that studio background that I had really informed the kind of museum practice of teaching about how artists do things and how they think and what their studio practice is and what we know. And I kind of found like a kind of a niche there. And so I've been working in the professional museum field for 30 years now in different institutions across the southeastern United States. And you mentioned the Vero Beach Museum of Art. Before that, in Florida, I was at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Jacksonville.
Oh, okay.
And I've been in two other states also, Georgia and Mississippi. So I really enjoy museum work, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Always coming from, originally from that museum education perspective, about engaging with audiences about why the arts are important, about why art is important, what it can mean in a community.
Yep.
And what it can mean for history.
Yep.
And now in my role as the executive director, I get to embody that and more about why the arts are important, why the Backus Museum is important, why these kind of elements of Florida cultural heritage are important.
It is part of our heritage, particularly on the Treasure Coast. I think it's really sort of it's a very deep, part of the heritage with the particularly art, Florida landscape art. Like I said, I love Backus's kind of shoreline, the landscape that he would do with the moonlight.
Yes, right. Yeah.
That's kind of my, I look at that, that's more of the signature that we have a replica in my son's room. And it's always like every time I turn around and look at it, I'm like, I love that.
There's a certain peace in it, right?
There is.
Nice,
there absolutely.
And, there's that kind of beauty. And one of the other things that I guess, right hearing you say that is not remarkable, but I will remark upon it, is that Backus and the Highwaymen artists and the other artists who were in this kind of landscape painting tradition here were all following this idea of creating representational art that you could recognize,
Yes.
art that was realistic.
Yes.
And they were capable of doing other things, but Backus even spoke about it in his lifetime. Because in his lifetime, in the 50s and 60s, that's when kind of Andy Warhol and people in the contemporary art world in New York were doing all these wild things, pop art and
Right.
abstract expressionism. And he was like, I like that, I guess, but that's not what I'm about here.
I think with the landscape art, it brings you back in time to a memory of something, at least that's for me.
Right, yeah. Certainly for Floridians,
yes,
right? There's
yeah.
people who
Well,
trace
probably
it back,
even people that, came here and had memories of coming here, whether it was, seasonally or, trips
True.
every year with their family
True.
and they bought it and it's something that you just look at and it brings you back in time.
and
Which
there's
is
also,
nice to have.
Oh, very nice, especially today, right?
Yep, yeah.
And there's people who look at it now also who may not be Floridians.
That's right.
Who moved here or came here, and they see it as a celebration of the natural environment, of
their new home.
Exactly, of their new home.
Yeah.
And then some people look at it and maybe with that nostalgia kind of feel, but also kind of recognizing how much has changed in Florida.
Oh, yes. That's and I think that's a lot of mine is reminiscing of my childhood or younger, younger adult years. And because it has changed a lot. That's something, we still have the Florida landscape, but not as much as we did.
And you can use examples of these, whether it's the Highwaymen or Backus, as examples to declare the value of these beautiful vistas, right? It's
Absolutely.
Like, if you can't see this anymore, if it's hard to find this, why is that? Maybe we should prioritize it.
Yeah. History of the Treasure Coast.
There you go.
How long has the museum been established?
Great question. So the A.E. Backus Museum and Gallery in Fort Pierce was first established in 1960.
Oh, okay.
As the Fort Pierce Art Gallery. Backus and 5 other community leaders in 1960 gathered and declared that the community needed an art gallery. Backus insisted that it not be named after him, even though he was the most established artist in the community. And he was the first director of the institution and would organize the exhibitions, but wanted to make sure that it was focused on other artists and not himself. And that continued until he passed in 1990.
Okay.
Plenty of people, many of the past boards of the institution, who always wanted to change the name to honor him, especially as he was getting on in years and the accolades were coming in, the praise for how amazing he was. People were recognizing, and then his years were short, that they wanted to honor him. And he insisted that it would nothing be named after him while he was alive. So like days after he passed, they changed the name to the Backus Gallery. And now we're a collecting institution, a true museum. And we're the A.E. Backus Museum and Gallery. We still show art of other artists, for sure. We have 5 different exhibitions that
That's what
rotate.
I was going to ask you about, because you have the jury. So on your season, so your season ends...
Our season traditionally ends in the latter part of June every year.
All right.
Begins for us in October.
October. And that's when you start the jury...
That's right. So one of the things that Backus did in his life and in the former Fort Pierce Art Gallery was to try to cultivate new artists, to give people a start, because somebody helped him when he was a kid and felt like other people he should help other people. And one of the ways that we carry that forward, and we're, in our 45th year maybe of doing this, is having a juried exhibition.
Wow.
Which for people who are not familiar with that, that means that we have like an open call to artists, whether you're a professional or an amateur, to submit artwork in a few different categories of medium or subject matter. And they submit those works. They pay a small fee. They submit those works. And we engage outside judges who form a jury panel. And they adjudicate or determine which of the works of art that they see are really the best in their view. And we try to get 3 judges every year. So it's not just like one judge
Right.
and really subjective. Everyone's got their opinions. But if we get more than one and then we get an odd number, 3, that helps kind of balance it out, hopefully. And we try to get people who are from out of town or out of the area so they don't know the people who are submitting, hopefully,
Right.
and usually. And they gather together and see the work in person for the first and only time. And then they spend all day judging them and then making awards. And then we present only those works that they judged as worthy, as what they thought was the best, and hang them in the exhibition. There's 2 different shows that we do for that every year. One at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the season, for us in October. It's called Best of the Best.
Right.
And it's the one that's been going on the longest for 45 years, I think, coming up. And then the last show of the season that we do, that opens in May and continues through June, is uses that same model, but is exclusive to photography.
Okay.
Only to photography.
All right.
We've been doing that one for 31 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So we have this long history of,
Yeah.
and tradition of celebrating artists, of nurturing artists to do their best, to share their best with the community. And they are 2 of our most popular exhibitions.
Yep. Well, that was Bean's philosophy, right? So
That's
you're just
right, yeah.
continuing on.
That's what we like to
So
think.
when you talk about the calls, when does that start? You have the photography coming up in May,
That's right.
and then the juried art, or they're both juried, but then the art in October.
Sure.
So when do the calls or the submissions? When does that start?
Yep, great question. And perfect timing, because we're getting
Right.
close to the photography call to artists. So we issue what's called a call to artist, and we'll send out postcards to people who've entered in the past, and we put it all on our website and do e-blasts and social media and stuff like that to let people know when we are making the announcement for our photography juried show. That announcement will be made coming up on Monday, March 16th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in just a few weeks, we'll make the announcement to inform or remind people that that's coming up. And then we usually give about a month of time between the announcement and when we accept entries.
Okay.
So around the middle of April is when we'll start accepting entries, up until the very first week of May this year. May 8th, I think, is the last day for entries. People have to go online and review the rules, because there's guidelines of how to enter and sizes and all that kind of stuff. And you have to make an appointment so that people don't rush all at the last minute and cause us a problem. So you make an appointment, it's your appointment, and you come in, and it's an easy process to submit your work. And then everyone holds their breath until we announce after the judging who's in the show in May. So that's coming up.
How many artists typically?
Oh my gosh. Well, we can get as many as 300 plus entries, and that can be distilled by the judges into anywhere from 80 to 100 works. And of those works, sometimes that can comprise 60 artists, 70 artists. It depends on how many artists enter multiples. There's no limit to how many you enter. And so many artists, especially photographers, who can lean into the shutter whenever they need to and print them up whenever is convenient. Sometimes they enter multiples, different images, of course, but multiples in the categories in order to see which one of theirs the judges think is the best.
Perfect. All right. Well, Marshall, I think it's a good ending point here. I appreciate you coming today and talking about the museum and the importance of the history of the Treasure Coast and what the Backus Museum represents. Everybody, thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next week.